FlyQ EFB by Seattle Avionics. Let's talk about seeing information about an airport. There are three different ways to see airport information in FlyQ EFB. One way of doing it is to take a look at the search box at the upper left corner of the app. You can tap into that and type in the ident or the name of any airport or nav aid you're interested in. For example, I'm flying from BFI, which is Boeing Field in the Seattle area. If I type in BFI, hit the blue search button, it shows me BFI. I immediately see that this airport is blue, meaning that the airport is controlled. A magenta would mean uncontrolled. Below the icon for the airport is a green indicator. That means the conditions are a VFR. Next to that are all the basic information you need to fly to the airport. The distance away from you, how long the runway is, maximum runway, what the TPA is, and all the fuel prices, and all of the frequencies you need. On the right-hand side, there's a series of 4 buttons that can immediately jump the map to that spot, create a direct to line to that airport, add the airport to your flight plan, which is plus FP, or next to that, the button that looks like a document means show me all the approach procedures at this airport. All of that can be done with a simple tap. One other way of finding airport information is to double tap on the map. Note, by the way, that it is a double tap, not a single tap. We do that intentionally because when you're flying in a plane, it's far too easy to tap the screen by mistake, and then you just have to get rid of a pop-up. So you see Boeing Field and all the same information about it. I'll tap that off. The third way of finding a particular airport is if it's in your flight plan, I just tap to bring up the tab bar, look at the plans, and here we're flying again from BFI down to San Francisco. So I'm going to tap anywhere on the line that says KBFI, and let's take a look at that. On one screen, I have all the basics I really need to fly to this airport. I know my elevation, my pattern altitude, maximum runway length. I see a satellite image. I see the FAA diagram. By the way, the satellite and the FAA diagram have green arrows on them. That green arrow that's going to the southeast has a 7 in it. That means that there's a 7-knot surface wind right now at that airport. Of course, if I want to, I can tap on that, and I can see more detail on the satellite view. It's live. I can move it around, do whatever I like. Or I can tap on the FAA diagram and see that. By the way, you can turn the winds off if you don't like them, or back on. Keep scrolling down a little, and the comm frequencies and the runways, including the crosswinds, are all there. Nav aids are right there. If I want to know something about the weather for this airport, I hit this tab that says Weather immediately next to General. And in a couple of seconds, I see my local, my regional, and my national radar, current temperature. Flick a little bit, and I see my METARs and my TAFs. Flick a little more, and I see winds aloft coming from SEA, which is Seattle. Flick a little more, and the weather briefing from Lockheed Martin or DUATS comes up. By the way, for those of us whose eyesight may have deteriorated a little bit in the past few years, you can tap on the TAF or the METAR anywhere, and you see it nice and big, easy to read. Similarly, if you want to see the regional radar or the local radar, you can tap on that to see it bigger. And it's also animated when you show it larger. Finally, if you're staying at this area for a couple of days, there's a link in the middle of the screen that says tap for 7-day forecast. When you tap on that, you see a completely human-readable 7-day forecast. And what a surprise, it's going to be raining all next week in Seattle. You can pull up approach procedures just by tapping on any of these. You can pull up a particular plate. In this particular case, we see that the aircraft is superimposed. I can zoom on that. That's because we're very near the airport. Zoom in, zoom out, flick it left and right, and so on. Very easy to do. If I go back to my airports by tapping that airport button on the bottom, I can also pull up the AFD for this airport. Notice it jumps immediately to the correct page. You don't have to flip through multiple pages. If I want to read the NOTAMs about this airport, I tap the NOTAMs tab, and there they are, including the expiration date, the effective date, and all the text. The Services tab shows me which FBOs have fuel and how much they cost. I can even update the fuel price if I want to. Phone numbers to call them, lots of information about the FBOs, rental cars, taxis, restaurants, AOPA member comments, FAA remarks, everything is right there. If this wasn't the airport that I wanted, but maybe I need to find an airport, perhaps due to weather, that's nearby, I can hit the Nearby tab. And it immediately shows me all of my nearby airports. Let's take a look at something else which isn't directly related to airports, but is a common question when you fly. Very often people call the tower and want to give a position relative to where they are. Well, a couple ways we can do that. One is to turn on the layer on the map and tell it to turn on the course line or the rings. I'm going to turn the rings on. Now you can see we have rings telling us how far away. You can customize this, but by default there are 3 rings. They automatically scale as you zoom in, so that gives you a good sense of what your distance and bearing is from other objects. I'm going to turn the rings off now. And in many cases, an easier way, let's say I wanted to know the distance from my current position to this airport right here. This is McChord Military Base. If I double tap here, if you take a look at the McChord line, the first item in the main area says 16.2 nautical miles south. That means that that airport is 16.2 nautical miles to the south of us from our current position. So just by double tapping on the map, you can get distance and bearing from current position to anywhere else. Very, very handy feature. One other feature that's very interesting is what we call the train X-ray feature. So let's say that I'm flying along here, I'm coming near my landing, but I'm thinking, well, maybe a little side trip would be kind of fun. So I'm wondering if I could take a trip across the mountains over here. If I take 2 fingers and I put them on the map at the same time, look what I see. This is what we call terrain X-ray. This tells us that on our current altitude, which according to the altitude gauge at the top of the screen, is around 8,000 feet. At that altitude, we see green and red. Green means we'll easily get over the terrain. The red means not so much. Basically, it's telling us that this would be a very, very bad idea at 8,000 feet to fly. Now, a neat thing that you can do also, in fact a very handy thing that you can do, is to grab one end of this and move it. So you may try to find a place that has an altitude such that you can actually fly over it. You can move either end of it, whatever you like, and so on. So it looks like flying at 8,000 feet along this entire area isn't going to work, and we should probably stick to the coast. More like that would be a lot safer. So that's information about airports in FlyQ EFB by Seattle Avionics.